Good morning, everyone. I am John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff_2020. And this morning, with George Webb on the road, I thought we might not be able to talk to him, but he's graciously taken a little time off off the road just for a moment to update us with what's going on and how he's responding to the incredible Twitter strike that took down so much of his great work. And where do we go from here? So give me 1 second to pull my Skype connection up, and I will bring you, by the magic of internet and Switcher Studio, which I love, by the way. Yay, Switcher Studio. George Webb, good morning.
Hey, John, how are you? Here at beautiful Myrtle Beach this morning. We just left with Wes yesterday. Left Atlanta, where we were with Addy Ads. We left Addy Ads in Atlanta, working with two whistleblowers who were testifying in front of the Georgia Supreme Court. I'm going down to Savannah to interview some people down there. And we're going to spend another week at least in Savannah, working the election, Dominion machine voting, etc., all that stuff down there. And Addy's going to be working in Atlanta. And hopefully between the two of us, we're going to bring some light to the American people.
That sounds like an awesome plan. What is the point of, I know Savannah's a great city, don't get me wrong, but why Savannah?
Well, there was 4 containers that I thought were being used under the cover of moving uranium that were diverted to the port of Savannah 3 years ago. And so I'm still chasing that. I think those containers may have been shipping contraband or other things for nefarious purposes. So to be honest with you, I still am chasing maybe it's a rainbow, maybe it's an old canard, but I still think that the people that are doing this drug and weapons shipments, these CIA folks that are doing this rogue wing of the CIA, are the same people doing these things like the takedowns of Trump, the impeachment takedown, Crossfire Serbia now, Crossfire impeachment, Crossfire Hurricane, all these things. Because why? They want to protect their business. It's just that simple. You talked about means, motive, and opportunity. Arthur Conan Doyle, the 3 basic precepts of investigation. And if you look at these people who are in this drug business and weapons business, all those things are there for them to do a Crossfire Serbia election hacking. So I'm just not quitting. They took my Twitter down. There was 4 years of documents that I published every day, all day, beginning at 3 a.m. and all the way till midnight. That's a heck of a lot of evidence that's gone. They wouldn't be coming after that if it wasn't important. This wasn't a Twitter strike. This had nothing to do with Twitter or me violating the terms and conditions of Twitter. This was all about someone hacking through dual factor authentication, which is very sophisticated. That means somebody has to not only get through my password, which is a pretty sophisticated password, they also have to get through the me emulating the fact that they have a device that they're in custody of, like my iPhone or my MacBook. That's pretty sophisticated. This was a hack. It wasn't a terms of service violation with Twitter.
Understood. And for folks that haven't noticed or found it yet, Neighborhood News Hour is the place to find George's very important video this morning on YouTube. So, no, of course, George isn't quitting, but we need to react. We need to spread the word, and that's what I'm doing right now, is to make sure that you know how to find George, where George is at, and how you can help. George, how can people help you the best?
Well, I do have expenses for more than just me now. We have set up a war room in Atlanta. We're trying to get a room like we did in Michigan. We had 4 people from Neighborhood News Studio down there. If you just type Neighborhood News, by the way, into a YouTube search box, you can find us. Just like you can type McDuff and Kennedy and find your channel. so people don't
Used
have to.
Used to, George. That's down now.
Yeah, I think they find McDuff _2020 now the same way, I think.
Yeah.
Once enough people kind of trod the path, they kind of build a cow path to your site, I think YouTube then puts you as the first. They figure that's what people are trying to find. But number one best way is Patreon. I like long-term supporters because they're the ones that want to see it through. They want to see the investigations all the way through. I really don't have a way of accepting, if you wanted to send me a check today, there is a one-time gift that you can do in Patreon. But some people don't, like the Patreon, whatever. But neighborhood news, there's, if you go to nnhour.com, if you want to contribute to to everyone's expenses and so forth, that's the best way. I think Patreon's my number one way. I have the biggest expenses because I'm going on site the most. And, when you're hosting 6, 7 people, 8 people, 9 people, the expenses are greater for a house than they are if I was just staying in a Airbnb room, so to speak.
That's well understood, and you've been fronting the expenses for a number of these charrettes as well as your own travel for at least 4 years now. When you and I traveled together on a couple of great road trips, you were always there with your credit card and picking up the tab. And I'll tell you, folks, that George Webb is not somebody that is in this for the money. It's a labor of love of our country, love of our Constitution. So George's Patreon is the big answer, and I really hope everyone will head over there as soon as this show is over and do something to support George. He certainly has done a great deal to support us.
Yeah.
Hey, George, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Aside from all the things that you had to say this morning and basically directed at exposing Peter Strzok and his leadership of this, what you have called the, what did you call it, the Crossfire
Serbia.
Crossfire Serbia. What does it mean to expose that in terms of what do the American people learn when you say Peter Strzok is this operation and it's been going on, with the election tampering since 2016? What is the impact of this, in your opinion, and regardless of the fact that the media is not going to broadcast this, I do think we could benefit from just having a short version from you of here's what we learned and here's what we need to do about it.
Sure. 2 countries that can be considered almost sister countries. There's really 3 or 4, but Crossfire and Serbia and Kosovo since 1999 have been at the center of covert weapons shipments to the Kosovo Liberation Army, KLA. This is well documented with the UN bombing in Kosovo. We've shipped them encrypted communications, again, well documented NATO through a organization called OSCE, the Organization for Security in Central Europe, gave them the Blackberries to set them up into being a mercenary force using encryption that the NSA and NATO can't break. So when I see that same level of encryption and sophistication, this goes back to Madeleine Albright in the West Wing of the White House with Hillary Clinton forming a secret team, just like Fletcher Prouty talks about a secret team in your dad's time, and your dad trying to trying to figure out who is in this secret team and where are they training, where are they getting their weapons, all that same thing that your dad was doing as an FBI agent and then later working for the Joint Chiefs. I'm doing the same thing 30 years or 40 years forward. I'm saying the same thing, that the same people that did the covert actions in Bay of Pigs, that secret team then went on to kill Kennedy. That's sort of an election operation in a bloody election operation. the same way Peter Strzok is that same sort of guy. We've just changed the names a little bit. Fast forward 40 years or maybe 35 years. But the central core group that runs these operations is that same wing of the CIA. And the one linking person to this group is Cofer Black. Cofer Black was the assistant to Ted Shackley for the Bay of Pigs, and now Cofer Black's in Burisma. He's doing all this energy dealing. He's doing all these covert weapons in Africa and Central Europe. So we're really honing in, just like your dad would have done, John. He would have sat down and said, "Oh, there's Bissell, there's Alan Dulles. Okay, who are their sort of Watergate burglars? Who are the people in Operation Mongoose that are going to be repurposed?" Mongoose was to get Castro. How do we repurpose this thing that Kennedy signed off on to be turned back against Kennedy to kill Kennedy? This is the same sort of thing where how do we take this money that was given from Congress and these billions that were given by Clinton in 1999 to this Kosovo army, which George Soros basically uses as his mercenary army, and then run operations the last 20 years? How do we get inside the secret team and expose it? So I know everyone says, well, look how McDuff paid for that with his life. Well, if that's the way it is, so be it. I could think of a lot worse ways to die. So, I think he lived an incredibly honorable life, and he put his effort towards saving his country. And I find inspiration in that. I want to be like a McDuff. I want to be like McDuff. I don't want to be somebody who sits back and goes, "Oh, well, I guess they just told me that I had to sit at home because of coronavirus, and they're weighting me down with my children. They have to be at home, and we can't talk to each other. We can't meet. We have to be victims." I just don't want to be that guy.
George, you've given a wonderful tribute to my dad and his memory, and I know that you are walking in his footsteps, and he is watching over you. I know he has watched over me for these many decades that he's been gone from the earth, but I feel his hand on me, and I'm sure he's with you too. The important thing that I get from this is that the secret team is not only still there, but it's on steroids, and that right now, whoever they are, have committed themselves. They are going to win this thing. And how do we respond? This is the question of the hour. I hear some people saying Trump should impose martial law. I hear some people say that they should suspend the Constitution. And I must say I'm absolutely, totally horrified by the idea. I mean, here's my comment, and I just take this 1 minute of time to say this. President Lincoln one time suspended the right of habeas corpus on the theory that in order to save all the laws, he had to break one. And that is the exception that perhaps proves the rule once in a while. But you can't suspend all the laws and still expect to get them back again. That's the end. If they suspend the Constitution, I say turn your flags upside down, brothers, because we are done. Don't suspend the Constitution. If you have to suspend habeas corpus, as long as it's the president, as long as he's following, as you and I always talk about, George, precedent, then the people will go along. But don't suspend the whole thing. That is the last thing we got left. Thank you.
Yeah. Johnny, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off there? I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to say that. And, I was taking your time to say it because I just feel so important. It's so important when you hear generals talking like that. I don't do that, generals.
Right. I would agree with you 100%, John. Any kind of general leading, any kind of thing like that would be a trap to put you on a list anyway. What we can do is what Richard Nixon did. He did a lot of declassifications in his last 60 days. Kennedy had done some, but didn't get his moonlight or twilight declassifications like you would have. But Trump could do a lot in terms of declassifications that would prove out what we're saying. The mongoose money, the Operation Mongoose money to get Castro, was the money that got Kennedy, right? And we learned a lot when Trump declassified 2018. He did the last big tranche of documents. People would see that this secret team from the CIA and counterintelligence, Angleton, Bissell, Dulles.
And don't forget Shackley, because you mentioned Shackley earlier. And folks, if you're not hip to Ted Shackley, understand when you hear that name, you know you're talking about the dark side.
And the connective tissue to Strzok is Cofer Black. The connective tissue is Shackley's assistant, which was Cofer Black, who's now tied in with Burisma and so forth. This is the answer. I mean, Burisma does mean shadow, and we are on it. It's like, John, I find so much inspiration from McDuff, because every time I peel another layer of the onion back, I go, oh my God, he knew that. And oh my God, he knew that. And not for my own skill or whatever, I just am using his example, and I have the magic of the internet that you spoke of earlier. I get to expose it as I'm going. So we all get to kind of look beyond McDuff's shoulder, and we're not trying to solve something that happened 50 years ago with the secret team. We're trying to talk about the secret team happening right now. So I just get to walk in McDuff's shoes, and people can see things through McDuff's eyes. I'm a poor imitation of that great man, but it's still, we get to be participants now. We can help now. And this is, I said it when I first met you, John, when I said, let's call him McDuff. I said, this guy is going to be the answer. You described it for me over a 4-hour period of time, and you went through the whole thing. You talked about Fletcher Browdy, if you remember, in our first meeting, and said, you got to look at this secret team guy. And then you talked about Jonathan Whitney, and you talked about all these books that you then went on to read that YouTube destroyed. And you said, these are the key threads. You laid it all out for me on that first meeting. Jason got tired in about a half an hour and went to take a nap. But I just found it fascinating, and I just saw you laying this out, and I said, oh my God, this is the path. And up until that time, I was kind of bumping into the furniture, just going every place I could, kind of willy-nilly. But after you kind of laid that out and said, you got to find this secret team, I immediately knew that's what we had to do. And it wasn't until a year later that we found Strzok. I had in this morning's piece, I talk about Strzok's IP addresses going to these guys, Lev Parnas and Fruman. I also talk about his IP traffic to this guy named Okean Wyansky, these informants, for the last 20 years, going all the way back to Kosovo. Again, Strzok only wants to rewrite the last 2 pages of the book, and they only want to release the last 2 pages of the book. And the last 2 pages are fiction. These guys have been informants for Strzok for 20 years. And all of a sudden they announced today, oh, we can't get in their phones. We can't decrypt their phones. The FBI can't decrypt their phones. I'm telling you, this goes all the way back to Enron, if you think about it. Enron was not what people think. It wasn't just about robbing all of the major power companies' very solid pension plans like PG&E and Portland. It wasn't just a bilking operation. It was using that money to empower generals to do oil and gas deals and some uranium all over the world. When I heard Jared Beck, a guy I respect a great deal and I've spent a lot of time with, even though I completely disagree with his opinions about Trump, when he says Sidney Powell defended all the Enron guys, that gives me pause. I'm like, what? Sidney Powell defended all the Enron folks? I got to check that. I don't believe that. But anyway, that's why I say I don't want to leave this into the hands of the people who defended Enron guys, because I know what that was. Those were generals, NATO and U.S., taking money from pension funds, floating and kiting a lot of bonds, buying exploration companies in India and all over the world, Africa, etc., tapping the gas and oil reserves illegally mostly, and then collapsing the exploration companies when they were done. And it was just a huge house of cards to cover that. And they also took down the largest accounting firm in America, and 40,000 people at Arthur Andersen. A lot of friends of mine work for Arthur Andersen. So these things are connected. Okay?
Wow.
You know, Lynn Wood, the person I'm suing CNN. And yesterday I was in CNN headquarters, right?
Yeah.
Lynn Wood was the guy who was making the speech with Sidney Powell in Alpharetta, Georgia 2 days ago. That was well televised. Thank you, Sidney, and all this. Well, that Lynn Wood who made that speech also did this lawsuit of Adam Sandman, the little drummer boy up at the Lincoln Memorial, the guy with the red MAGA hat, that kid. And that's okay. That's a high-profile case. I understand. He's Atlanta and CNN. Undisclosed amount of settlement he won. But I based my lawsuit, the defamation case, using his lawsuit. And I saw this Lynn Wood and I added a lot, but with evidence. But I saw Lynn Wood had also represented going back to the Benets, Jean-Benet Ramsey. And I'm like, wow, I worked with John Ramsey at XS Graphics in Boulder. So I'm like, holy mother of fright, how did Lynn Wood get out here? And then I found out, Lynn Wood, goes back to the representing Richard Jewell, the guy who was trying to save everybody in Centennial Park, where I was filming yesterday in Atlanta. Another extremely high-profile case. I just hope we're not going down a blind alley with all these lawyers that represent generals to do extraction of oil and gas. I just hope that we're not going down a blind alley, especially when they start talking about Venezuela and Hugo Chavez. I see them leading us down a blind alley. And that's why I talk so much about Serbia and Strzok and Kosovo as the real secret team, not a fake phantom team. This is a real secret team we're talking about.
That was huge, George. I didn't know any of that about Enron, and who does? 99.9% of America does not know what you just said in 5 minutes flat. To connect that, by the way, there is a YouTuber of Sidney Powell speaking after the Enron trial and talking about her role in it and how awful the prosecutors were. The prosecutors were trying, all the tricks, and they didn't care if he was guilty or not. They just were trying to force him into plea. She was defending the executives of Arthur Andersen, if not, perhaps Enron itself. And that is the tenor of what she had to say. She obviously was not attacking Enron as a corrupt institution itself. She was going after the prosecutors. I didn't listen to the whole tape, but it's there just for people's reference on YouTube. Interesting, and to see her personality in that state and how she is a little different now. I'm concerned. I'm concerned that we had Ali Alexander on the podium with her. I'm concerned that these generals, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe you could straighten me out, one or two of the generals that are on Flynn's side are actually talking about invoking the Insurrection Act or something like that.
Yeah, any calls to violence or all that sort of thing, I think is a lost leader. I think you're just basically creating an FBI file for yourself. I see this thread with Sydney, and I see how she's a defense lawyer in the Department of Defense, and I just can't understand why she keeps taking these turns down these blind alleys. Jared Beck gave a very strong legal this is the McDuff level legal, Georgetown level legal analysis of saying, hey, you need to lead with your strongest witness. This isn't like Perry Mason, where all of a sudden we discover a witness at the end of at the 12 o'clock hour. You lead with your strongest witness. When you apply for injunctive relief, which makes basically say that the defense can't present anything, the evidence is so strong, you need to actually stop the certification of these elections. You need to present the evidence. Sidney Powell keeps saying, well, I don't need to present the evidence in a complaint. That's true normally, because then that comes out in discovery. But with injunctive relief, you need to present the evidence up front. This is why I kept saying you need to have that Serbia communication, and also the communication to Iran and Edison Research for the exit polling. Why is Iran dialing into our elections election eve? Every hour. Everyone says, well, they're doing exit polling. That's what exit polling is about. They need to collect the data. Well, that just seems odd. I mean, Edison Research has offices in New York. They have offices in Los Angeles. They have offices in Chicago. They don't need to dial in from Iran. And the problem I had with Sidney Powell was she wasn't talking about these killer prima facie pieces of evidence that everyone goes, wait a minute, what? What did you just say? Serbian people were dialing in the night of election? What? That's foreign interference. I look at it this way, John. If you took, let's say, a horse race, and this was a close horse race between Trump and Biden by anybody's account. Some people say it was a huge landslide. But let's say in the last 16th, when they're whipping the horses, coming in for the close, coming into the wire, you have one jockey whipping the other jockey across the face with the whip for the last 16th of a mile. Well, yeah, that horse won, but they have a thing called the steward's inquiry. And they say, wait a minute, steward's review, we're going to review this for interference. And they have a thing called interference. And they can disqualify a horse based on interference. And if we have foreign interference, all bets are off. So this is the strong card. This is the ace. This is leading with your ace. And this is what Jared Beck, you taught me this, everybody's taught me this. Always lead with your best card. Then you come in later with, well, there's 10,000 votes in this county over here, and there's 5,000 votes over there, and there's this SIM card we just found over here, and all this kind of more sixes and sevens, if you would, in the card analogy. I'm mixing my metaphors here liberally. But Jared has a point. You lead with your strongest witness. If you have foreign interference, anybody would immediately say, I don't need to hear anything else. We need an inquiry. We need a full audit. Tell me when they logged in. Don't tell me that somebody sits on a board of a competitor in Venezuela and expect me to connect the dots and stop a U.S. election based on that. That's not evidence. That's just kind of hearsay or speculation. They're not going to stop an election because of the transition teams and stuff on speculation.
Well, speaking of speculation, the whole idea that Russia hacked our election was based on a lot of speculation. And that had legs up until this election. I mean, they never gave up on that one, and they're still pushing it. And so how obvious is it? I mean, people can't even distinguish Serbia from Russia on a map. The Serbia and Russian language is, it's a Slavic language, like, the Serbo-Croatian. And anyway, the point being, hey, hello, Serbia is a foreign country, Russia, we object to that because it's a foreign country. Well, did you know that Serbia is right next to Russia and it's also a foreign country? How can you look yourself in the mirror and say you object to interference by Russia enough to spend 4 years fighting over it and then turn your face away and not consider whether Serbia is not guilty of exactly the same thing right now.
Boy, John, I can't wait to bring you in pro hac vice for that big summation. Oh my God, the jury will be eaten out of your hand. Oh my God. But put that in a bottle for me, please. I'm going to snap that open right at the end. You're doing the summation, John. What a brilliant 2 minutes, and maybe that's the opening. Maybe that's the opening statement as well, because everyone in the jury will be going like this the whole time you're speaking. Yeah. It's Donnie O'Sullivan. Yeah, he said the 14-year-old that threw the caricature of the CNN logo, and when Trump threw that out of the ring, that was a Russian troll. I remember Donnie O'Sullivan saying that. Yeah. People are all shaking their heads. Yeah, I remember when, Don Lemon said this, and Wolf Blitzer said that, and, Cuomo said this. So I think you just knocked it out of the park there, grand slam home run. And, you guys talked about this for 4 years. You obviously consider foreign interference the most important thing ever in an election. So we're only playing your own tune back to you. We're only recording it and playing it back to you. Only this time we have the evidence. This is why it's beautiful, John, because it's a beautiful parlay, because they did it for 4 years. So they can't argue that foreign interference is insignificant. And we have the IP addresses. This morning when I saw that Parnas and Fruman, the FBI couldn't decrypt their phones, remember, they want to come forward with the phones. They want to say, hey, these two BlackBerries these two guys are carrying are communicating with Rudy Giuliani behind the scenes to set up a meeting with Kolomoisky, the arms dealer, the guy who kept getting 12 billion in these tranches from Congress and the IMF, and kept getting 5.8 billion tranches from the Congress with this USAID. They want to make it seem like somehow Giuliani is in league with these guys. Giuliani is somehow in league with Kolomoisky, right? Because remember, Giuliani meets with Kolomoisky before Giuliani meets with Zelensky, right? They don't want you to know the 20-year history of running guns to these guys from Albania for doing border operations for the Muslim population, the Muslim Albanians. I had a chance to interview a few Albanians this week. And I found out Albanian language is not anywhere near anything of the surrounding countries. And it's where they launched operations, where Struck and operations were launched into Serbia. This is going to be the answer to the test. It is going to be George Soros funding these groups. It is going to be Albania going over the border. 4 years ago, we talked about organ harvesting in the Yellow House by the Albanian Kosovars, these KLA generals. DynCorp was there. We talked about Camp Bondsteel in Kosovo, which was David Petraeus's creation, the biggest, most massive base. I've interviewed several different people from the German and Dutch soldiers that were stationed at Camp Bondsteel. This was where David Petraeus and Henry Kissinger launched all these covert actions. This is Alan Dulles' partner. Kissinger's another connective tissue. Alan Dulles' partner was Kissinger all the way back, a young Henry Kissinger back in Cuba with Kennedy and McDuff. Now we have Kissinger the elder coaching the student Hillary Clinton, along with her kind of mentor Madeleine Albright, moving Strzok around Yugoslavia, where Strzok cut his teeth with the U.S. Army. So the parallels here, the threads here, John, are exactly as you laid them out 4 years ago. I describe it in my book, Let's Call Him McDuff. If you don't believe me, it's all right there in black and white. And I'll just leave it at that. And I know I'm wordier than you are, so I want to go back, rewind the tape, and use your 2 minutes rather than my 9.
Well, George, you do me too much honor. I am just reflecting upon the incredible work that you're doing, and when we put together a real understanding of the importance of Serbia in the world, then I think this will be unlocked. I think I'm going to do a show on let's update ourselves as to the history of Serbia. I mean, from the Austro-Hungarian Empire to now, because the tragedy of that poor country is just appalling. And what's happening now is the fruit of the invasion, of the bombing of Serbia, and the dispatching of Milosevic out of the country into a UN or whatever it was, World Court jail, where he died. And that idea of ignoring Serbia is key to their defense. If people understand, hey, we bombed Serbia, that's an important place in the world to look at, and now look who's won. You know, it's the Soros folks that are running these ops. Then, as you said, from Albania to Kosovo, the incredible human tragedy that has been associated with that. This is all going to be covered up if Biden wins the election. Nobody will ever know this story. So tell it, man, and thank you so much, George, for all your work. To get George's books, go to Amazon and just go under George Webb, and he's got, I don't know how many they're still selling. Sometimes they take them down with no notice, but I know you can get McDuff. And what else would you advise people to get really up to speed on what's going on, George?
If you just type McDuff, go to Amazon, type McDuff. I'm also republishing and rewriting everything with my proofreaders and my editors and my Grammarly. I'm rewriting everything with new evidence for free on Patreon. So for people who don't want to deal with Amazon, can go to Patreon. I'm rewriting both McDuff and Blackberries Matter. I think Blackberries Matter more than anything. I might change the new book to be Blackberries Are the Only Things That Matter. What you said about this, John, specifically with Serbia, you wouldn't do any better to start with William Engdahl like I did 4 years ago. We talked about Engdahl 4 years ago. We talked about Seth Rich. You read Seeds of Destruction, but there's another book he did about the color revolutions run by this Gene Sharp organization called OTPOR, OTPOR, which is this color revolution, basically psychological operations, low intensity warfare group that was created by Kissinger and Hillary Clinton and Madeleine Albright to run all these psychological operations in 180 countries, John, in 180 countries, not just in Kosovo, not just in Bosnia, 180 countries. Gene Sharp is the guy who lived in Cambridge for a long time. If you read his book, Democracy and Dictators, he outlines 198 different nonviolent, low-intensity warfare methodologies that you could use to overthrow a government. That's great if they're dictators, but not so great if they're duly elected people. I don't know if Chavez was duly elected or not. I thought he was, but I can't remember. But I'm saying that that's just one finger of OTPOR's piano. They had operations, and this is the CIA front, obviously. It's a proxy. It's not, Gene Sharp sitting in his library in Cambridge, Massachusetts, didn't come up and inspire 180 different topples around the world in various stages of topple, right? It's supported by Peter Strzok's family and his the other insiders in Cambridge that were doing these revolutions. Engdahl's book, I thought, was something about empires, and I can't remember, but he talks all about the color revolutions. We talked about it a lot 4 years ago and said all these color revolutions, Libya, Syria, Sudan, Yemen, all are color revolutions created by OTPOR in Belgrade, Serbia.
Engdahl is a priceless source. I've got 4 or 5 of his books. I've read 2 of them on my show. Both are gone now, but you can actually catch me reading two videos on his essay, The Great Reset, which is very timely right now. So
Yeah.
William Engdahl. And okay, George, folks, get a copy of George's books from Patreon or from Amazon, and support him on his Patreon as he continues to do all this great work to preserve our republic.
Thanks, John.
All right, man. Thanks, George. Safe travels.
From beautiful Myrtle Beach.
Yeah. Hey, hold that camera still a minute. We want to see the waves.
Yeah, and I'm heading to Savannah. I'm going to be in a swamp, which is fitting because that's where I'm going to drain. But we're going to be talking to some people that are going to be talking about containers and how there was only depleted uranium coming in and not highly enriched uranium. And we're going to be talking about how the rest of the containers seem to be filled with contraband materials. So still trying to cross the T's and dot the I's on that story. But anyway, here you are. There's beautiful Myrtle Beach, and on to Savannah.
All right, George. On to Savannah. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.